Welcome to the Rancher's Voice, presented by the Montana Stockgrowers Association. I'm Jay Bodner, MSGA's Executive Vice President.
And I'm Raylee Honeycutt, Director of Natural Resources. Join us for conversations surrounding policy, the legislature, and issues that matter most to ranching families in Montana.
Welcome to this week's episode. This week we're going to be looking at some key legislation that MSGA has been testifying on. We'll give you a review of what we heard last week, and then we also do have a great interview with Representative Josh Kassmier, who is the House Agriculture Committee Chair.
We want to remind our listeners to make sure to subscribe to the Rancher's Voice. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. Make sure to like, share, and comment on each episode. And if you have questions for us, reach out at Kenny, Keni, at mtbeef.org.
So this week I'd like to start off with House Bill 324. House Bill 324 is a bill that dealt with placarding of meat in Montana. We've seen versions of this bill last session, and I think it's important for us to really touch on the position that the Montana Stockgrowers Association took on this bill. So just to start off, we did oppose this bill, but I think it's important to really look at the mechanics of the bill and really why we took the position that we did. So just to start off with, it would require retailers to label meat coming into their meat counter as they sell it, and they would have to identify it as U.S. or origin imported or origin unknown, unlabeled. And so as we looked at this bill, we think it's pretty important. For one, there is a legal note that the legislature had wrote on this bill dealing with, there is some concern over the supremacy clause with federal and also with the Federal Meat Inspection Act. So there is concerns from a legal standpoint of this bill. The other thing that I think is important that we did bring out is that we place a lot of responsibility on the retailers with this bill, but yet nobody has talked to the retailers to see how can we implement this? How does it increase beef sales? And so there was concern, and the retailers came in and opposed to this also, just for some of those same concerns. And I think thirdly, one of our last concerns was, when you force the retailers into identifying this, we think in many cases it's going to be difficult for them to identify this because they're getting in boxed beef, which they're further processing. And so to specifically identify this, if they can't, they have to put that origin unknown or origin unlabeled on their meat counter. And that's just not an effective mechanism to sell and increase our beef sales. And so we pointed out some of those concerns. We did say that, there is a program in Montana that we have seen great success, and that is our Made in Montana and also Grown in Montana label. And so this is available to those producers. If you are a part of that membership, you can put that label on your product, and it further identifies Montana products, which we think is a great avenue and something I think that we all recognize and we'd like to share in that. And we've seen a 30% increase in that program over the last year. So we know that retailers are using that, small processors are using that. So we think that is a much better avenue to move forward. So
yeah, I think some great things to know is that it's a voluntary program and it's free. You have to show 50% value add in your product, which from a meat processing standpoint is really easy to do. And then the other great thing about that program is that restaurants and retailers can also sign up. The requirement doesn't allow them to put Made in Montana on the product, but they can advertise that they sell or their food contains Made in Montana products. So it's a really great program that if you're interested in kind of going down that value add avenue to check out, because they do the marketing, it's free voluntary sign up, and offers a lot for producers that are interested.
So kind of moving on, we'll touch on House Bill 94. So this expanded the loan types that were available for repayment on the loan assistance program. And so it did allow private loans with with federal loans to be eligible for this program for that repayment. So we think it's through the Montana Growth Through Ag program. So we think this is also a good bill, and it's been moving on. It's passed the House and on to the Senate.
The other area that we had a couple bills this last week is in regards to bison, and I did chat about those last week during our podcast, but there were two bills regarding bison and tribal oversight or Indian reservations and bison. So I'm going to kind of clump them into two kind of to give the recap, but the first bill, House Bill 311, was in regards to not requiring paperwork from the Montana State Veterinarian if bison were to be transferred between federal entities. So that would be either federal government, national parks, anything like that. The second bill, House Bill 312, was a little more in regards to brucellosis-free certificates and bison coming out of potentially Yellowstone National Park and moving to a tribal entity or reservation before testing brucellosis free from the state veterinarian. We stood in opposition of both of those bills as we continue to advocate for continuing the disease management program that the state has in place, as well as the importance of our brucellosis free status for the state.
Yeah, and we've seen these bills similar fashions in the last couple of sessions, and I think it's also important to recognize that the Department of Livestock and the state vet did also stand in opposition to these two bills, and just recognize that these bills would allow putting our state management program in jeopardy, and so we certainly don't want to move down that direction. So hopefully we'll be successful in opposition to these two bills once again. We did have the opportunity to get in front of the Senate Fish and Game Committee on confirmation hearing for the Director of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, Hank Warsak, and he was successfully confirmed by the Senate. So we're looking forward to working with the Director and the Department as we face some of the challenges with fish and game and some of the wildlife issues that we face.
And now I get to come to you with some good news. Senate Bill 27, which was the livestock loss multiplier that we've talked about for many weeks, that has now passed the legislature and is headed to the governor's desk. So that will be one of the first bills that from the agricultural industry that the governor will be seeing on his desk, and actually one of the first bills in general that he'll be seeing. So it has passed, it's headed to the governor, and we look forward to him signing that in the very near future. Also, as it relates to livestock loss, we've talked about Senate Bill 58. That is the additional $100,000 fund transfer to go to non-lethal and preventative measures for predation. That had its second hearing in the House, and we would anticipate an executive action happening with that sometime this week. And then also within the livestock world, Senate Agriculture had two confirmation hearings last week, both for Livestock Loss Board as well as the Board of Livestock. Our president, Jim Steinbeiser, testified in those meetings on our organization's behalf. So we look forward to, again, having executive action taken for SR 63 and SR 66.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, so that's Gene Curry and Alan Redfield for the Board of Livestock, and for the livestock loss, we had Elaine Alstead, Doreen Gillespie, and Joe Kipp. So I think those will be great additions to those boards, and we look forward to that. We did have the opportunity also on Senate Bill 29. This dealt with weather modification. This was really went through the Water Policy Committee. It dealt with some cloud seeding provisions in it. And Montana did have some laws on the books that dealt with this. So there is some changes to that law through this bill. and we did support this. We did have policy that supported this. There were probably going to be some amendments to this bill, but it would allow at least for the opportunity to look at potential cloud seeding opportunities in certain situations. You did have to do an environmental analysis, and there is some bonding required, or at least some liability bonding required on it. So we do think this is a good bill to potentially build up some of that winter snowpack, that we would see the benefits of that all summer long. So we think this is a good bill, and we'll see how it has moved out of the first house, or it's in the first house, and it has moved out of the committee. Next, we do have also SR 12. That was the confirmation hearing for the associate water judge, and Stephen Brown, and he was also confirmed. So we did stand in support there also.
Yes, congratulations to him. Moving into the House tax world, House Bill 303 had a hearing last week and actually received quite a bit of press, so some of you may have seen that in the news cycle as well. But that is the Big Investment Grows or Big Jobs Act. That is one of the governor's tax relief bills, and it was sponsored by Representative Josh Kassmier. That is for a tax reduction on equipment within Class 8. It will benefit both large and small businesses with an additional $100,000 relief against their business equipment tax. And so we stood in support of that. In general, it will be affecting roughly 4,000 businesses within the state and providing that additional $100,000 exemption. So now the tax exemption will be at $200,000.
Yeah, and we've advocated for this, moving down this direction in business equipment tax. The one thing that this bill did allow is the backfill and that reduction in that income tax. So they did find a mechanism to backfill that back to the county, so the counties are whole. So we do think this is a good bill moving forward.
And now let's move on to the week of February 15th.
Yeah, we've been faced, we were in Senate local government this week, and looking at a few bills dealing with how, when subdivisions are reviewed, how they look at agricultural lands, agricultural conveyance systems, our ditches, our irrigation ditches. And in many cases, we've seen a couple of bills that would like to eliminate that look at ag. And so we did have the opportunity to oppose Senate Bill 174. They are recommending amendments, and the sponsor recommended amendments that we think would basically fix our opposition, and then we would be neutral on that bill. So, and our second one is Senate Bill 231. These deals with family transfers. It also would allow an exempt well on those, and I think for everybody, we know that exempt wells have been a pretty hotly debated topic for the last 10 or 15 years, and so in this bill, they also did look at eliminating the exempt well provision on there. That is an amendment that's being proposed by the sponsor. And with that amendment, we would also remove our opposition to that bill too.
Looking at Tuesday, we will be in House Fish, Wildlife, and Parks for House Bill 352. This is a bill regarding conservation easements, and to boil it down, what it will do is that a conservation easement acquired by a qualified private organization that uses public funds will have to allow for public access on that property. So it really forces a government mandate onto giving public access to any new conservation easements occurring in our state, which for us, we have huge concerns regarding private property rights, and we feel like it diminishes those private property rights as well as kind of de-incentivizes the whole voluntary incentive-based program of conservation easements. So we will be going into that hearing, opposing that bill, and hoping to share our concerns regarding how it infringes on those private property rights.
Yeah, on to House Ag. We do get the opportunity to support 2 more bison bills.
Lots of bison bills.
Lots of bison
7
bills.
days.
These ones, I'll start with House Bill 318. So this clarifies the definition of bison and what a wild bison is. We've seen a number of versions of this bill in the past legislative sessions, and they've all been vetoed. So we expect a different result this round. This is be carried by Ken Homeland, Representative Homeland out of Miles City. And so it does clarify that position of what is actually a wild bison. So we'll be supporting that. House Bill 302, this also is another bison bill, and it requires the county commissioners to have a say in if bison will be relocated to their county. Once again, we've seen versions of this bill in the past. This is a great bill that I think allows local input for any proposed bison reintroduction into their county. So we'll be supporting that also.
And lastly, on Tuesday, Senate Ag, Livestock, and Irrigation will have one last confirmation hearing in that bucket of confirmations that rolled out. It is the Board of Veterinary Medicine. We will be in support of the nominees. They are Paul McCann from Havre, Kate Reed Nelson from Livingston, and if you're listening, I'm sorry, I just butchered your first name, and Katie Ryan from Harleton. So we'll be excited to have those folks joining the Board of Veterinary Medicine.
And Dr. Ryan has actually been one of our committee chairs on our Animal Health Committee, and so we look forward to that confirmation hearing. Moving on to Senate Natural Resources, we have Senate Bill 180. This would establish an interim committee on soil health. We think this is a good first step to talk about soil health. We'll be looking at this. We'll be supporting this bill.
Yeah, and then on Thursday, there is also a bill on the Senate side. It's in the Senate Ag, Livestock, and Irrigation Committee. It is Senate Bill 210, which is almost a replica or is a replica of House Bill 324, which is the placarding bill that Jay mentioned earlier in the podcast. So we had our hearing in the House side last week. That bill is waiting on executive action. The Senate will be hearing the same bill on Thursday, and again, we will stand in opposition on the Senate side for the same reasons that we mentioned previously.
A few other bills that we're kind of watching at this point. We have Senate Bill 230. This looks at the sage grouse program, and if you go back a few years, the state invested $10 million into the sage grouse program, and so this looks at a small repayment schedule basically to repay that $10 million back. So we'll be watching that. There is another Senate Bill 211. This is another one of these subdivision review laws that looks at agriculture. We think the language in this bill does not necessarily affect us negatively or positively for that matter. So we'll be just watching that bill also. And then we have House Bill 372. This is another business equipment tax, and this would eliminate the business equipment tax, although this bill probably does have some challenges with the backfill to the counties to make them whole, and so we'll be watching that at this point too.
So now we'd like to introduce you to Representative Josh Kassmier, and he will be joining us and sharing a little bit more about his seat as chair of the House Ag Committee and share a little bit more about some of the bills that he's working on this session.
Good morning, everybody. Today we have the distinct pleasure of having Representative Josh Kassmier join us today. Josh, maybe you can just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and a little bit about your background.
Yes, well, thank you for having me. I'm Josh Kassmier. I represent House District 27, which is all of Choteau County, most of Hill County except for Havre. I take in all Liberty County, and then I take in the north side of Cascade County into a little bit into Great Falls. I grew up on a family farm. My grandpa homesteaded, my uncle's still farming it. I help him out. I also do crop insurance. I work for that, doing on the side in the summertime. We raise wheat, barley, cows, peas, a little bit of everything. So
Great. So you're part of the free labor, you get to go back and help out.
Yeah, it's free labor. You're gonna like that. It's fun. It's a great lifestyle. The funnest part, you work with your kids. You get to, they're out there branding, chasing cows. During the quarantine last year, I think they spent more time working cows than they did schoolwork. But we won't tell
You
anybody
get to
that.
be pretty good help when you have them around like that too. You kind of hate to lose them.
Yeah, between my cousin's kids and my kids, they pushed all the calves up the chute. They worked their tails off, so they did a good job. It's fun and they enjoy it. It's good.
Yeah, it is great.
That's one thing about agriculture. It's great for the kids.
Yeah, certainly is, and just get a lot of certainly a great experience and something that they can carry on for the rest of their life with that. So just a good work ethic, and they're pretty sought after when it comes to the job market too, potentially. So
yeah, they are. Yeah, my kids would rather go move cows than play on the video games. So I think that's a good thing.
yeah. Well, you're currently the chair of the House Ag Committee, and maybe you can just share a little bit who's on the committee and some of what you kind of anticipate some of the bills we'll be hearing on that committee over the next couple of months.
Yeah, we got a lot. We got a couple new ones. We got Representative Dooling. She's my vice chair. We got Vice Chair Olson from the Democratic side. She's been on the committee a few times. We got the new ones. We got Michelle Binkley and Brandon Lair, Marshall Malone, Marty Malone, Ron Marshall, Ken Walsh, and that Whiteman Pena. But most of them seem to have a pretty good agricultural knowledge or background. So, it's a fun committee. A lot of them have, we got returning ones. We got Representative McCamey, Fred Anderson, Becky Beard, Willis Curdy, Moffy Funk, Katie Sullivan. I hope Frank Smith. Well, he come from the Senate side, but he's been on ag before. So we got a pretty good committee. So I look forward to working with them. They've been pretty fun to work with so far. We've had a few bills. We're moving kind of slow. We had a couple livestock loss board moves. I moved a hemp bill. We got Senator Cuff's livestock loss bill coming up, I think next Tuesday, which is increasing the fund by 100,000. So we got a lot of bills sitting out there. I got some hemp bills. I see there's some meat processing bills. I'm going to be very interesting what they're trying to do there. And there's one that's coming from Katie Sullivan that's a revised agriculture equipment laws. So that'll be interesting. I just got that draft. I'm trying to dig into it, what she's trying to do there.
Okay.
Great.
Good.
Well, your committee will hear quite a few bills that impact our membership, and with hybrid session this year, it has been a little different. So we would love to hear from you, like what advice you have for our listeners on how they can best connect with your committee, as well as how they can get engaged on the issues that are important to them.
The hybrid session, I was a little nervous in how it was going to play out with technical issues, but it's worked very well. I think a lot of people have attended the committee via Zoom. We haven't had no trouble hearing them, getting them heard. So the biggest challenge is I think some people don't realize you got to log on 24 hours before the committee, provide written testimony, so you're registered and we know that you're going to be attending. But for the most part, I think it's the most transparent session we ever had. In all my committees, there's a lot of people attending via Zoom. So I think it's given Montana's a better chance to be heard.
Great.
So, and we're still getting a little bit of people attending in person, which is great. We love to see people, but it's definitely given an opportunity to people to participate in their government.
And I think that's important just to mention that registering the noon before the committee hearing, and just so folks know, if they haven't been in the room, you as the chair get a list of those people that have registered as proponents and opponents, correct?
Yes, everything is given to me before the committee. We'd like to have the written testimony to know who's testifying, what they're testifying on. We get a list. So that's probably been the biggest challenge. People forget they got to do that. I know in some committees we made some exceptions just because there's technical issues. People are trying to register online and they can't. It's probably a system fault. Maybe it's overloaded. People all do it at the same time. But we're being pretty, trying to work with everybody on that. We don't want to deny anybody being heard.
Great. I know our members appreciate it.
Yeah, certainly. I think just from our perspective, I would commend you as leadership and really the staff too for the way that's been conducted. Certainly from our view, it looks like it's worked very well. And I know a number of our members have been able to participate that way. And certainly it's a busy time in agriculture, and it's sometimes difficult to make that drive to Helena. And so, it works very well. And we appreciate your efforts.
Yeah, you look at the weather that's coming. It's a lot easier to stay at home and zoom in.
Yes.
So just as a reminder to our listeners, if you are interested in testifying on a bill, you can just go to leg.mt.gov, leg.mt.gov, and it will prompt you right there to sign up for your testimony.
Yeah, I've done it just to try it. It's pretty simple. So,
yeah.
And if you got to, I know there's some people that are sharing the Zoom links. As long as they're listed, give written testimony. You can have one computer, and we're being pretty understanding on how this all works. So trying to work with everybody.
Well, just kind of moving on, in front of your committee, bison issues are always kind of at the top of the mind for our listeners, and certainly something we follow very closely. And this session, you're going to be carrying House Bill 302, which deals with authorizing county commissioners before wild bison can come into the county. So maybe you could just tell us a little bit about that bill and maybe a little background on it also.
I am. That bill got introduced this week. I carried the same bill last time. It was ultimately vetoed by Governor Steve Bullock. It's a simple bill. It's kind of, everybody wants to complicate it and dig into the weeds, but all it is was requiring county commissioner approval before the state relocates wild bison. It doesn't affect livestock or in that at all. It's just trying to give the locals some say before the state starts moving these animals into the county. With the brucellosis, we got to protect our ranchers. Let's be real. I've had a lot of conversations with people. It's hard to contain bison. So once they're released, they're not going to respect fences. They're just going to kind of move however they feel. So, I know there's a lot of issues that tribes feel that we're going to limit them, but the state has no jurisdiction over the tribes. So specifically points out that we have no jurisdiction on relocating wild bison to the tribes. So, we just want the people to have a say before we move in. And the best way to do that is go to your locals. The county commissioner is going to have to hold a meeting. Get the people involved. Do we want these bisons in this area? And if the voters say yes, they will be relocated.
Yeah, we've certainly supported that in the past, and we will continue to that. And really, from our perspective, that does make a lot of sense. You want that local input on things that affect you locally, and it's easy to have support for something if you don't have to deal with it. And so this kind of brings it back home to having really making sure that anybody in that community in that local county has that input. So yeah, we appreciate your efforts there, and we look forward to that hearing.
Yeah, you look, I've had some discussion with some people that are raising bison for livestock. They understand that the fences that it takes to maintain them bison, keep them in their designated areas, tough. And like they pointed out, you just don't go out there with a four-wheeler or a horse and move them. So it creates a huge challenge if these wild bison start getting mixed in within the herds on BLM ground, or, you're going to more than likely have to have the sheriff involved to get them moved, because you don't want people getting attacked by wild bison trying to protect their cattle herd.
Sure.
Right. Well, we will definitely continue to watch that as it has its first hearing probably in the next week or so. So we'll be tracking that. The other bill that we wanted to chat with you about is in regards to Governor Gianforte's announcement about the Business Investment Grows, or BIG, Jobs Act, and you will be carrying that bill on his behalf. It's House Bill 303, and it's really revising business equipment taxes. So what can you tell us about that bill?
Okay, yeah, I'm happy and honored to work with the governor on this bill. This is another simple bill, but it makes things a little complicated because you start playing with business equipment tax, it starts touching property tax to the local levels. But it's really one change. We're increasing it from 100,000 to 200,000 before you have to report your business equipment. So it's going to help people that are starting out or small businesses that maybe only have 150,000 worth of business equipment. It's just raising that level, and it's gonna ultimately, we're estimating 4,000 people are gonna be affected by this bill. So it's gonna help 4,000 small business owners. So we would like to have it more, but incremental steps. We're just keeping. If we find more money, we can raise it to maybe 500,000, or maybe in a few years raise it to $1 million before you have to claim your business equipment.
Yeah, certainly. I think from our perspective, that equipment is pretty expensive, and it's, anytime we can see that raising that exemption, I think that's going to be beneficial. And 4,000 potential people that would, be eliminated from paying that tax. I think that's a great step in the right direction. And we do understand there are some challenges with backfilling that revenue, but it looks like and the governor has been successful in kind of navigating that, and so we're pretty excited to see those steps kind of move forward.
Yeah, we've been working on this for a while. We were just trying to make sure we're not leaving the county short. That's not the intention of the bill. So we've been working with some people on appropriations, making sure everything flows the way it needs to flow. So right. I mean, I'm hoping it helps like a beginning farmer. Maybe he buys a tractor for 80,000 or 150,000. He doesn't have to pay taxes on it. Get him going.
Yeah.
One less bill is always good when you're in agriculture.
Always. Well, I think that covers all the questions we had for you, Representative Kassmier. I'd just like to thank you once again for joining us today, and also just appreciate your efforts with your ag background and being the chair of the House Ag Committee. You've done a tremendous job representing ag and making sure everybody gets a chance to participate. And so we just commend you in your efforts and the work that you've done.
Thank you. And yeah, it's my pleasure. It's a great honor to represent agriculture. It's the backbone of the Montana economy. So
I'd like to thank Representative Josh Kassmier for joining us today. It's wonderful to have a strong agricultural advocate in that position as chair of the House Ag.
And I know that I've definitely enjoyed working with him in the House Ag Committee. So looking forward to working with him and his committee throughout the rest of the session. We just have a couple reminders for our listeners. This is the 7th week of the legislature. So we are kind of rapidly approaching the midpoint of session. So next week, Wednesday, February 24th, will be the last day that general bills can be introduced before transmittal. So that's kind of a key marker for us as we look at what is headed towards our direction in the next week or so. We would anticipate then a lot of bill hearings over the next 9-ish days after that, as if your bill doesn't get heard before, if general bills don't get heard before that, they will not have a hearing for the session. And so just a reminder to anyone, as we start sharing more information on bill hearings or what's lined up for the next week or so, if you are interested in testifying remotely, you can still do that. That can be done, and you can register at leg.mt.gov. And just a reminder, you must register by the noon time mark the day before the hearing to get that link and get set up. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to help you get set up with that.
Yeah, and it is a challenge as we get near the transmittal date that things move pretty quickly. So sometimes we don't get the 3-day notice that these bills may come up. So once again, call us if you have any questions, or just watch the website.
We'd like to thank you guys again for joining us and listening. Just a reminder to subscribe to The Rancher's Voice, follow us on social, and make sure to like, comment, and share this episode. Again, we'd love to hear from you, so if you have questions for us, email Kenny at keni@mtbeef.org. And thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, everybody.